Welcome everyone. In this lecture we'll be exploring the urinary system, one of the body's major organ systems responsible for maintaining internal balance. We'll often think of the urinary system as the waste removal pathway, but it plays a much important and broader role in regulating blood volume, blood pressure, pH, electrolyte levels, and even red blood cell production. We'll begin by examining the gross and microscopic anatomy of the kidneys, the primary organs of the urinary system, and then follow up with the pathway of urine as it moves throughout the ureters into the bladder and out to the urethra. Along the way, we'll also highlight the physiological mechanisms that control filtration, reabsorption, and nutrition. By the end of this presentation, you'll see how central the urinary system is to the body's overall homeostasis and health. Before we dive into the details, let's review the learning objectives for this chapter so you have a clear roadmap to what we'll be covering. First, you'll be able to name the four main organs in the urinary system: the kidneys, the ureter, urinary bladder, and the urethra. Each of these play a specific role in the formation, transport, storage, or elimination of urine. We'll discuss not only what these organs are, but also explain their major functions, from filtering blood and regulating fluid balance to storing and excreting waste. We'll take a closer look at both of the microscopic and macroscopic structures of the kidney, exploring how its complex internal anatomy supports its critical function. We'll also learn how blood flows into and through and out of the kidneys, and how urine is formed in the nephron before it is transported through the rest of the urinary tract. Finally, we'll trace the full path of urine from the filtration in the renal corpuscle to its elimination from the body, linking the structure directly to function throughout. The urinary system plays a central role in maintaining the body's internal balance. One of its key responsibilities is filtering the blood to remove metabolic waste like urea and creatinine, which are byproducts of protein metabolism. In addition to excreting these wastes, the system tightly regulates blood volume and pressure through water retention or elimination, and the release of hormones like renin. It also manages electrolyte concentration and helps control blood pH by excreting hydrogen ions and reabsorbing bicarbonate. Beyond these regulatory roles, the kidneys are the endocrine glands as well, producing erythropoietin to stimulate red blood cell formation in response to blood oxygen levels being low. Each kidney is a compact yet powerful organ tucked just behind the peritoneum of the abdominal cavity. The right kidney typically lies slightly lower than the left because of the space occupied by the liver. Structurally, the kidneys are protected by three layers: a tough outer capsule, a cushion of perirenal fat, and a connective tissue sheath known as the renal fascia. These layers not only shield the kidney from trauma, but also anchor them in place. At the medial surface of each kidney lies the hilum, a gateway through which blood vessels, lymphatics, and nerves, and the ureter passes. Despite their relatively small size, the kidney filters an impressive amount of blood every day to maintain overall fluid and electrolyte balance. Internally, the kidneys are highly organized structures tailored for filtration and urine formation. The outer cortex houses the renal corpuscles and convoluted tubules, which are key components for filtering blood and modifying the filtrate. Deeper inside is the medulla, where structures are aligned in straight parallel patterns to efficiently transport and concentrate urine. Together, these zones form the framework for the nephron's function and make the kidney incredibly efficient at regulating the internal environment. The renal cortex is where the action of filtration really starts. It houses the glomeruli, which are clusters of capillaries that filter the blood, as well as the proximal and distal convoluted tubules, where most reabsorption and secretion takes place. Between the medullary pyramids, the cortex projects inwards as renal columns, providing supportive structures that route blood vessels. This highly vascularized zone is essential for the initial stages of urine production and regulating solutes inside the blood. Moving inward, the renal medulla consists of cone-shaped structures called renal pyramids. These pyramids appear striated due to the arrangements of collecting ducts and nephron loops. Each pyramid tapers to a point called the renal papilla, where urine exits into a drainage system. The medulla plays a key role for adjusting water content and concentrating urine, allowing the body to conserve water when needed. It's a highly specialized environment designated for fine-tuned reabsorption. At the tip of each renal pyramid lies the papilla, the point where newly formed urine exits the medulla. From here, urine flows into cup-like structures called minor calyces. Several minor calyces join to form a major calyx, and then these converge into the renal pelvis, which is a large collecting reservoir. This funneling system ensures smooth transport from urine from the microscopic filtering units to the ureters, minimizing backflow and maximizing efficiency. The renal pelvis is the final collecting structure within the kidney. Shaped like a funnel, it collects all of the urine from the major calyces into the ureters. Smooth muscles in its wall initiates rhythmic contractions known as peristalsis, which help to push urine downward. From here, urine enters the ureter and continues its journey to the bladder. This seamless transition between microscopic filtration and macroscopic drainage is a testament to the kidney's elegant structural design. The kidneys are incredibly vascular organs, receiving up to a quarter of the body's resting cardiac output. This high volume of blood flow supports their primary function: filtering waste, adjusting blood composition, and regulating volume and pressure. To achieve this, the kidneys rely on two capillary networks, one for filtration and one for exchange and recovery. The journey of blood through the renal vasculature is highly ordered, ensuring precise control over filtration and reabsorption at the microscopic level. Arterial blood enters the kidney through the renal artery, which quickly divides into segmental arteries at the hilum. These segmentals branch into interlobular arteries that travel between the renal pyramids via the columns. At the base of each pyramid, the arteries curve and form arcuate arteries, which mark the boundary between the cortex and the medulla. From there, small cortical radiate arteries fan outward into the cortex, delivering blood directly to the nephrons for filtration. Within the cortex, cortical radiate arteries give rise to the afferent arterioles, which deliver blood to the glomerulus, the site of filtration. The glomerulus is a tuft of capillaries under high pressure that allows plasma to filter into the nephron. Blood exits through the efferent arteriole, which has a smaller diameter, to maintain pressure at the glomerulus. This setup ensures that efficient transfer of plasma into the nephron without the loss of cellular components or proteins. After blood leaves the glomerulus, it enters a secondary capillary network. In the cortical nephrons, the efferent arteriole leads to the peritubular capillaries, which surround the tubules and facilitate reabsorption and secretion. In the juxtamedullary nephrons, the efferent arterioles form long hairpin-shaped vessels called the vasa recta. These descend into the medulla and are crucial for maintaining the kidney's salt concentration gradient, which allows for water conservation and urine concentration. Once blood has been filtered and rebalanced by the nephron and the associated capillaries, it enters the cortical radiate veins in the cortex. These veins drain into the arcuate veins, which arch around the base of the renal pyramids. From there, the blood moves into the interlobular veins that run through the renal columns. Eventually, all of this blood collects in the renal vein, which exits the kidney at the hilum and delivers the purified blood into the inferior vena cava, returning it back to the heart. The nephrons are the microscopic processing unit of each kidney, where all filtration and urine formation takes place. Each kidney contains around 1 million nephrons, each working in parallel to continuously cleanse the blood and regulate body fluid balance. The nephron is made up of two key parts: the renal corpuscle, where filtration begins, and the renal tubules, where reabsorption and secretion fine-tunes this composition of the fluid. After this, the filtrate passes into the collecting ducts, which determine the final volume and concentration of urine. This system allows for precision regulation of electrolytes, blood pressure, and pH. The renal corpuscle is where blood filtration begins. It consists of the glomerulus, which is a capillary network that filters under pressure, and the Bowman's capsule, which surrounds and collects the resulting filtrate. The filtration barrier between blood and the capsule is highly selective. It allows water and small solutes like glucose, urea, and electrolytes to pass through while blocking blood cells and large proteins. This forms the primary filtrate, which then moves into the renal tubule for further modification. The proximal convoluted tubule is the first section of the nephron tubule and is responsible for the majority of reabsorption. Its brush border significantly increases surface area, allowing efficient uptake of valuable substances like glucose and amino acids. It also reabsorbs most of the filtered sodium and water, returning them back to the bloodstream. In addition, the PCT plays a role in secretion, removing substances like hydrogen ions and toxins from the peritubular capillaries into the tubules for elimination. Its cells are packed with mitochondria to power those transport processes. The nephron loop plays a vital role in the kidney's ability to concentrate urine. The descending limb allows water to exit into the hypertonic medulla, concentrating the filtrate. As the filtrate rises through the ascending limb, sodium and chloride ions are actively transported out, but water cannot follow. The countercurrent mechanism creates a salt gradient in the medulla that draws water out of the collecting ducts where needed. Juxtamedullary nephrons with their long loops are especially important in water conservation, allowing the kidneys to produce small amounts of highly concentrated urine during times of fluid deficits. The distal convoluted tubule and the collecting ducts are the nephron's final processing station. The distal convoluted tubule is where hormonal regulation becomes especially important. Aldosterone increases sodium reabsorption, while the parathyroid hormone promotes calcium reabsorption. The collecting ducts receive input from several nephrons and determines the final water content of the urine. In the presence of antidiuretic hormone, aquaporins are inserted into the duct walls, allowing water to be reabsorbed and producing concentrated urine. Intercalated cells also assist in acid-base regulation by secreting hydrogen ions or bicarbonate as needed. Under the microscope, the renal cortex is easily recognized by the presence of the renal corpuscles, which are circular structures made up of the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule. Surrounding these are the proximal and distal convoluted tubules. The proximal convoluted tubule are prominent brush border, giving it a fuzzy appearance, while the distal convoluted tubule appears clearer and more defined. The cortex is highly vascularized with peritubular capillaries which support reabsorption and secretion activities. The renal medulla has more organized striped appearance due to the parallel orientation of nephron loops and collecting ducts. Unlike the cortex, it lacks glomeruli. The thin limbs of the nephron loops are lined by simple squamous epithelium, while the thick ascending limbs are collecting ducts have cuboidal and columnar epithelium. Vasorectal capillaries also run along these structures, helping to maintain the osmotic gradient critical for water reabsorption. The collecting system begins in the cortex and travels through the medulla, playing a crucial role in determining the final characteristics of urine. It receives filtrate from many nephrons and is the last opportunity for the body to reclaim water and solutes. Hormones like antidiuretic hormone and aldosterone act here to regulate water balance and electrolyte composition. Antidiuretic hormone promotes water reabsorption to collect and conserve fluid, while aldosterone helps retain sodium. Specialized cells also manage blood pH by adjusting hydrogen ions and bicarbonate. The juxtaglomerular apparatus is a critical feedback structure that helps the kidneys respond to changes in blood pressure and fluid balance. It's located where the distal tubule loop backs and touches the afferent arteriole of the same nephron. The macula densa senses sodium levels in the filtrate, while the juxtaglomerular cells respond to releasing renin when blood pressure drops. This activates the RAAS system, the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, pathway, ultimately leading to vasoconstriction and aldosterone release, which increases sodium and water reabsorption to restore pressure and volume. The ureters are slender muscular tubes that serve as conduits for urine from each kidney to the urinary bladder. Positioned retroperitoneally, they run along the posterior abdominal wall and enter the bladder at the angle that helps prevent urine from flowing backwards. This anatomical orientation, along with the valves at the urethrovesical junction, is key for maintaining one-way flow and protecting the kidneys from ascending infections or reflux. The ureter wall is built for both protection and propulsion. The innermost layer is a specialized transitional epithelium that stretches and forms a tight barrier against the urine's acidity. The underlying connective tissue gives its flexibility, while the muscularis layer is responsible for peristalsis, which is the rhythmic contraction that moves urine down against the concentration gradient. Finally, the outer adventitia secures the ureter to the surrounding structures within the retroperitoneal space. Clinically, the ureters are vulnerable to blockage, especially from kidney stones. These stones often get trapped at natural narrowing points, the junctions where the renal pelvis and the crossing over of the pelvic brim, or the point where the ureter enters the bladder. Such obstructions can cause intense pain, commonly felt in the lower back or groin due to shared spinal nerve pathways. Chronic obstructions or reflux can also lead to infections or kidney damage, highlighting the ureter's important balance beyond just transportation. The urinary bladder is a distensible muscular organ designed for efficient storage and periodic expulsion of urine. It sits low in the pelvic cavity within slightly different anatomical relations in males and females. Its position and elasticity allows it to hold a substantial volume, up to about half a liter, without significantly increasing internal pressure. As the bladder fills, stretch receptors signal the brain, triggering the sensation of needing to urinate well before the bladder reaches its full capacity. The bladder's internal lining is made up of transitional epithelium, which stretches as the bladder fills and forms folds called rugae when the bladder is empty. Below that lies the submucosa, which is rich in connective tissue and neurovascular elements. The muscular layer, known as the detrusor muscle, consists of three interwoven layers that interconnect and contract as a unit during urination. The outer space is covered by adventitia, except for at the top, where the serous membrane lies the superior surface facing the peritoneal cavity. The trigone is a triangular region at the base of the bladder, defined by the openings of the two ureters and the internal urethral orifice. Unlike the rest of the bladder, the trigone lacks rugae, giving a smooth appearance. It's highly sensitive to stretch and plays a role in signaling bladder fullness. The angled entry of the ureters helps prevent backflow, protecting the kidneys from infection or damage. Clinically, the trigone is an important site examined during bladder procedures like catheterizations. Urine expulsion is controlled by two sphincters working in coordination. The internal urethral sphincter is involuntary and ensures that urine does not leak between the voids. The external urethral sphincter is under voluntary control, allowing us to delay urination until it is appropriate. When the bladder reaches a certain level of stretch, the micturition reflex is triggered, which means that the detrusor muscles contracts while the sphincters relax, allowing urine to exit. This reflex can be consciously overridden by the brain up to a certain point. The urethra is the final passageway for urine leaving the body. It's a flexible muscular tube that changes in epithelial lining along its length, helping to protect tissues from the acidic environment of urine. The female urethra is relatively shorter and straight, while the male urethra is longer and passes through the prostate and the penis, serving both urinary and reproductive functions. The shorter female urethra partly explains the increased risk of urinary tract infections in women. While both sexes have a urethra, their anatomy and roles differ significantly. The female urethra is shorter and opens just in front of the vaginal opening, solely for urination. In males, the urethra is longer and segmented into the prostatic urethra, the membranous urethra, and the spongy regions. It not only conducts urine, but also serves as a passageway for semen during ejaculation, making it part of both the urinary and reproductive systems. The micturition reflex coordinates the act of urination. As the bladder fills, stretch receptors in the wall send signals to the spinal cord, which triggers parasympathetic activity. This causes the detrusor muscles to contract and the internal urethral sphincters to relax. Voluntary control comes in play when the external sphincter, which is innervated by somatic nerves. Together, these systems allow us to delay urination until it is socially appropriate, unless bladder pressure becomes too great to resist. The journey of urine formation starts with something as simple as drinking water. After ingestion, water is absorbed through the walls of the small intestines into the bloodstream. It circulates throughout the body and eventually reaches the kidneys. There, plasma is filtered into the glomerulus, forming a raw filtrate. Useful substances, including much of the water, are reabsorbed as the filtrate moves through the tubules. Additionally, waste is secreted and the final urine is concentrated based on hydration status. The result is excreted through the urinary tract, completing the cycle. The urinary system does far more than eliminate waste. It filters out toxic byproducts like urea and creatinine, while tightly regulating blood pressure, fluid levels, and electrolyte balance. The kidneys also help stabilize blood pH by managing hydrogen and bicarbonate levels. Importantly, they're endocrine organs as well, producing erythropoietin to support red blood cell production and renin to maintain blood pressure. They even activate vitamin D to help absorb dietary calcium. Altogether, the urinary system is vital for maintaining homeostasis across nearly every physiological domain. To wrap up, the urinary system plays a central role in maintaining the body's internal environment. The kidneys filter massive volumes of blood each day, fine-tuning water, salts, and pH while excreting metabolic wastes. Urine flows through the ureters to the bladder, where it is stored before being released through the urethra. Hormonal control allows the system to respond dramatically and dynamically to changes in hydration, blood pressure, and oxygen demand. It's not just a filtration system, it's a highly integrated control center essential to life.